Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin of Father.Son.Galaxy. We are here to speak with Scotty Jayro, co-host of the podcast, the Bombadcast. Not only is he one of the more prominent content creators in the Star Wars community, he is also Scott Jarreau, a middle school teacher in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and author of the new book, Midichlorians, an alliance of science, mythology, and magic. That's right. I got the book too, Scotty.
Honored.
Welcome to Father.Son.Galaxy.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. And we were talking before we recorded, but like we've always done stuff around each other, and you know, I'm very lucky to be here and be able to chat with you. And you know, hi Tanya in the back. But I'm just super excited to be here and to talk about this especially, but to just be here with you. It's beautiful. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, so we finally got you on the podcast. So thank you, and congratulations on the new book.
Thanks. I still can't believe that I get to look at it. It's like right there in front of me. So.
Yeah. So congratulations. So when we first heard the word or the term Midichlorians, it was in The Phantom Menace back in 1999. 10-year-old Anakin Skywalker asked Qui-Gon the question, what are Midichlorians? Qui-Gon's response is, Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides in all living cells, and we are symbionts with them, life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without Midichlorians, life could not exist, and we would have no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. When I first heard this, Scotty, I saw it when it came out in the theaters in 99. I had no idea, to be honest with you, what Qui-Gon was talking about. Now, here we are more than 25 years later. I'm still a little confused as to what Midichlorians are, so I am so glad you wrote this book. So I will ask you the question, Scotty. What are Midichlorians?
I love this. Okay, so for those that don't know, and obviously you just heard it, but I am a middle school educator. I taught science for 4 years, so this became a deep fascination to me when I saw kids learn how cells work and how very simple microbiology works. So like I rewatched this obviously when I started doing the Bombadcast a lot, and I had to reflect on like what really are they. And Qui-Gon's right. They are that. They are those things that are kind of difficult. It was kind of a huge sentence, and George kind of just dropped all that on him. But what they really refer to and how I see them and what this book is supposed to do is supposed to make you think about them as not just a, scientific structure. It's also mythological. It's also kind of magical. But most importantly, it's thematic. And, the whole point of the Phantom Menace is that the Naboo, the Gungans, they're not working together. That's the whole point. They're just not working together. Then when the Trade Federation invades, that's really a big problem, right? They are now not working together, and they've got a parasite, a Phantom Menace, literally trying to drain, their resources from them and take over the planet. George obviously built it as a thematic structure for the whole movie. He also includes the living and the cosmic force, which is also a symbiotic connection. And the whole point of Midichlorians really and truly down to its core is the idea of like, can you be in sync with the things around you? Be it a microorganism or maybe even the community that you surround yourself with or people that aren't like you, symbiosis is a very profound train of thought, not just a biological, understanding.
So what is the difference between Midichlorians and the Force? Well, how do the two work together?
I love this. Okay, so this is going to be like a little Bible study. We're going to go to page, and I'm just kidding. But like the funny thing in the book does, like when I wrote this and I structured this, I did my best to say, okay, if I were to hand Kerwin this book, or if I were to hand my 7th graders this book, or if I were to hand someone that hates Midichlorians this book, it's to break down all the preconceived notions. But really, how does it function with the Force is very simple. Everyone is connected to the Force through their Midichlorians, right? The Midichlorians communicate with what they call the microscopic entities known as the wills. And that's where it does get kind of heavy. That's the part where I still have some misunderstandings because it's not as straightforward as it should be. But ultimately, anyone can tap into the Force. One of the better examples we've seen recently in Star Wars canon is Sabine, where Sabine Wren at the beginning of the Ahsoka series didn't really tap into the Force in season 1. By the end of the season, she does a Force jump. You know what I mean? Like she has it. It's there. everyone has that potential. Everyone is talented in their own ways. George Lucas has even said that. And honestly, the whole notion of this book is to show direct quotations as to where George said this, when he said it, how does it apply to canon, and of course, tying in everything else. The Force is a power, right? But some people are inherently drawn to it through their genetics, or they're drawn through it through their, I guess, in touch with their self, like, their oneness with themselves. So the Force is a powerful thing, but I think all of us have our own way to connect to it, honestly, not just in a silly Star Wars way, but in a very legitimate, real way.
So back in 1977 with the original Star Wars, Obi-Wan described the Force as it's what gives the Jedi his power. Mm-hmm. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. Mm-hmm. When I first heard it, the Force to me felt like, if you believe in the Bible or you read the Bible, the Force seems spiritual, like it's God. It surrounds you. It's omnipresent. Mm-hmm. And in The Empire Strikes Back, spoiler alert, that changed when Vader was revealed to be Luke's father. Mm-hmm. So the Force now at that moment seems to be biological because mm-hmm. it's inherited. Luke is and Vader are related. So is the Force spiritual, or is it biological, or both?
I think it's both, because if we take it from a biological aspect, and I've been using this example a lot in terms of explaining just this concept to most people, and your audience might get a lot out of it. But like, to me, at this moment, you and I talking, right? This is kind of a miracle within itself, because right now my body's functioning normally. My heart is beating. I am breathing. I am focusing. I am thinking. I've got a lot going on in my life, and I'm sure you do too. But the fact that we can do this and talk to each other is a miracle, not just biologically, but in terms of, just a social concept, right? Like I love that the Force was very mystical, and I love that the Force is very biological, but you can marry both of them. Like the miracle of life and the miracle of our interaction right now is a miracle. It is a very sacred moment that we can live it and share. And any interaction can be viewed as that if you think about it hard enough, you sometimes are in sync with people and you can't really explain it. What is that? Is that the Force? Is that is your heart beats the same rate? I mean, you know this. I'm sure when you go dancing, when I go dancing, everyone's connected by the music, right? That within itself is its own Force. I think it is a very mystical experience to go dancing and do that, but it's also biological. Your heart rate is 120 beats per minute. Most dance music's around that same rate. So you become in sync with the people around you, and you become in sync with the music that is also, filling your atmosphere. So I love talking about this stuff, obviously, but that's a question I've never heard before. That was a good question, for real.
No, not a problem. So I don't know what year you saw The Phantom Menace, but I recall that there was so much controversy regarding the term midichlorians. I think there were a lot of fans who watched the film didn't understand what it meant. That maybe they felt that, our definition of the Force in the original trilogy was more of a spiritual awakening, for lack of a better term. Yeah. But then it seemed that the midichlorians just seemed more scientific, and I think it went above a lot of people's head. So what do you think is the reason for the backlash? If you recall that there was a backlash, what did the fans misunderstand about the term midichlorians? So
for me, I was 5, probably the big thing I liked the most was Jar Jar and the pod race. I remember those two things specifically, right? But in terms of backlash, and we still see it today, unfortunately, I love my people at Lucasfilm. I've got friends that work there, but for the longest time, M count was like we're going to say it, but we're not going to say it. And then the same thing, Asajj Ventress in the Bad Batch straight up says midichlorians, and you go, oh, wow, we're finally taking our steps. But if you notice in all of the sequel trilogy and most of the projects leading up to The Mandalorian, like midichlorians was never mentioned. And for the most part, even during that era, the prequels were really never even mentioned. They were alluded to, but never like truly mentioned. So for me, I never understood the backlash, because if you take anything at face value, you know, you can accept that it is that. And how do I work with that narrative? To me, it doesn't negate anything we got in the OT. It does not make the OT worse. To me, in some ways, it might even elevate the original trilogy. The same can be said about the prequel trilogy. I mean, the whole point of Midichlorians too is there's a narrative background all the way till we get to the Plagueis moment, right? How do I save the ones I love from dying? And it's the whole idea of you manipulate the Midichlorians they have in their body. So like, it's been something that we've seen ebb and flow in the fandom. And honestly, the reason I wrote this book is to kind of calm people down, because there should be no vitriolic hate towards a thematic element of a show or a movie that still is existing in this day and age. I mean, we're 25 years later. We can get over it, right? You know? and I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by the discourse because it was something I didn't really understand or engage with ever. And I guess to me, the discourse does come from one George Lucas mistake. And I don't think I state this in the book necessarily, but I've certainly said it out loud at the panel that I had at Star Wars Celebration Japan. Everyone equated midichlorians to power levels, like maybe a video game, Capcom versus Marvel, anime, you name it. Like they all kind of thought the more of these things you have, the stronger you are, which isn't necessarily the case. It's the idea to justify how Anakin was a virgin birth. You see what I'm saying? Because like Anakin's virgin birth is the idea of like the reason he was born is because the Force, willed it into existence. And that's why he is so connected to the Force and he has so many more midichlorians than Yoda. But the discourse is something that I find particularly interesting. And I hope what I've written and what I've spoke about and even this podcast alone can change some preconceived notions of what it means. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because maybe this is a part that I'm still a little cloudy about. So if you have a high midichlorian count or M count, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're stronger in the Force. Or do you agree with that or no?
There hasn't been much elaboration on it, but I don't agree to that because it was a way to explain Anakin's sudden appearance. Why didn't the Jedi know he existed for 10 years? And it also, I think it is this idea of like Anakin was born so powerful with the Force, whereas some people had to train to be more powerful in it. And like, there goes the whole idea of the chosen one. And it plays into Luke and why Luke is so powerful and Leia is so powerful. And, it leads all, it's a direct line, I wish there would be something like, if I could write an official canon book, that would be like one huge addendum that I would put like at the beginning of the book, like, this doesn't necessarily mean this because there's no way, right? I mean, we've seen Luke do some incredible things with the Force, Yoda do some incredible things with the Force, and Vader or Anakin hasn't really even stepped up to that level. So I think it's just what you're born with. And we're all born with different talents, dude. We're all born with different talents. I can honestly say that I've seen and taught a lot of kids, and I've seen many different talents manifest. And that doesn't always manifest, naturally. It takes a lot of like grinding and, you see kids grow through like how much work they've put into something. So, and some kids, unfortunately, or fortunately, they're just naturally gifted. They can just tap right into it. So that's how I justify it, really.
Right. So I guess the plan for Lucas was he needed something to distinguish Anakin from all the other Force users. So he created this idea of him being, not having a father, this virgin birth, if you will, and that his M count was the highest that anyone has ever seen because we needed to know that Anakin was special, that something about Anakin that he has or the gifts or talents that he has cannot compare to the gifts and talents of other Force users.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So let's talk about immortality. This is a section in the book that you discussed, which I thought was very interesting. The Jedi and the Sith look at immortality in different ways. So can you explain what immortality means for both?
I'm only 29. I turned 30 in like a few weeks. which is exciting. But I don't tend to think about death in such a cut and dry way. Death is the end. Blah, everything's over. No, I don't believe that way spiritually. I don't believe that way biologically, and I don't believe that in terms of energy. And the Jedi have the outlook that I have personally. Being able to let go and acknowledge who you are allows you to be more one with yourself and one with the Force. The Sith, however, the Sith ideology is that you've got to grasp on to every bit of life that you have and don't let go, and you hang on and you hang on and you attach yourself to other beings. You attach yourself to maybe even like an object, like we've seen with like Darth Momin. But like you've got to realize that it is selfish to hold on when it isn't necessary anymore. I think to acknowledge death, and death is only the beginning of a journey that we can't comprehend, is a very sacred thing. And we see that with Force Ghosts, right? Force Ghosts are this incredible idea of like they let go of themselves completely and consciously, and they can then manifest in a different way and guide the next generation somewhere. Whereas you got a character like Palpatine, the Rise of Skywalker, who is like decrepit and dying, and he just feeds on power. He needs power to live. And you've got to realize that no matter where you align yourself with, if you let something naturally happen, it's probably for the best, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So immortality for a Jedi is not about this physical presence. Mm-hmm. The cosmic force to them makes them immortal. Yes. Whereas with a Sith, what they're looking to do, they know they can't be here forever, but what they're trying to do is pass on their immortality through some other medium, like cloning is, for example, probably the reason why in The Mandalorian, where, the Empire or the Sith, perhaps, or, Emperor Palpatine was very interested in cloning because he wanted to, at some point, create Force clones. And that, to him, would make him immortal, and that they can do his work. These clones can do his work, even though he's not around or he's not here physically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And honestly, the best thing about that is, like, you can really see that with power. People that have power are going to hold on to it until they can't anymore, until someone revolts or until they die. And where does that power go? How does the power structure of any society, or even, it could be something as silly as like a guitar amp. Like, you put so much power through something, it eventually has to stop. It's going to stop. It's going to die. It's going to cease to exist. And you take those ideas and you take, maybe your frame of mind of like what it means to live and let go, and apply that. That's a very Jedi way to think. You got to let go of something if you see that it is on its last leg. I'm sure, I don't know about you, I've put down a couple of pets, and like, you want everything in your heart to let them live, and they mean the world to you, but that's not good for them. You can see that they are in a horrible condition, and you want them to let go. You want to let go yourself, because it's selfish sometimes to like cling on to something that is not necessarily, needed anymore, or even wanted, or even should live, right? It's heavy, really heavy stuff. We're getting deep here, man.
No, that's exactly why I want to have this conversation with you. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, I want to go back to talking about Anakin again, and talking about Anakin's powers versus Luke's powers. Mm-hmm. Now, we know that Anakin is one of the most powerful Force beings out there. Now, Luke has the Force because, it is inherited, but we're not aware of how strong of a Force Luke is. I mean, what we know in the original trilogy, that he had it, but maybe he didn't know how to tap into it, and that he needed some training to also assist with getting that strength in the Force. Do you know, or do you believe that Luke's M count may be just as high as Anakin's, or maybe not? Maybe it's not relevant. his MCal.
No, I like this because with Luke, you can also apply Leia. And we know,
true.
and Leia's right over my shoulder in the video right here. But like, you think of Luke and Leia as twins, obviously, but it really wasn't until the sequel trilogy that we saw that deeper aspect of Leia's Force abilities. I don't necessarily know exactly how those things manifest genetically, because some people have it more than others in that sense. But to me personally, I do think there has to be some sort of connective through line, between them. I would like to think that Luke is just as powerful as his father, right? But is that the case, right? It just depends. Depends on how you look at it too, because Luke managed to live a much longer life. Obviously, Anakin did turn to the dark side. So there's something to be said there with Anakin completely embracing a different side of the Force that Luke never really embraced. So I think in some aspect it does go pretty deep. I do think Luke is a seriously powerful person. But, does he share that power with Leia? Leia's manifests a little bit easier, a little bit quieter. And Leia does, of course, train Rey, who is the next, Skywalker metaphorically. So, man, I like to think Luke shares that same intensity of ability, not necessarily power, but openness to ability that Anakin has, or if not more,
I was under the impression for many, many years that in order for you to have the Force, that you have to get it through genetics, because that's what we see with Luke and Leia and Anakin. But now it seems the storytelling that we're getting nowadays with Dave Filoni, you mentioned Sabine, is that you don't have to, get it through genetics. You don't have to have a parent who had it, but you can tap into it if you, I don't know, to make it simple, like you just have to work hard at it, and you have to, I don't even know how to explain it. So this is one of the things that I ran into with Sabine being strong in the Force. During Rebels, we had no indication that she had any Force sensitivity. And I think it might have worked better for me, seeing Sabine trying to get to a point where she does tap into the Force and she's able to use it to control it and manage it, if we saw an inkling of it during Rebels. So when the Ahsoka series came out, and then all of a sudden Sabine, has it, she just needs to tap into it. I found that was pretty interesting, because well, if if Sabine could tap into it, that means anybody could tap into it. So Han Solo, for example, if Han Solo believed in the Force, and that all living things has it, with working at it and just tapping into it further, that he could also have been someone strong in the Force.
I love that you bring this up. I think it's very important to address this too, because Sabine is that character that the Force literally awoke in her, kind of like it does with Rey, even though Rey is genetically powerful in the Force. The thing with Han Solo is, and this is where the living in the cosmic Force really kind of get interesting. Everyone's always like, Han's got good luck, or Lando's got good luck, or you name any scoundrel, they've got good luck. Maybe they're at the right place at the right time, and maybe the cosmic Force is willing some of their actions into existence. If Han hadn't made the Kessel Run, obviously, a lot of things wouldn't have happened in the right order to where Ben Solo was born and then redeemed at the end. A lot of it comes down to fate and destiny. How do you view those things, right? I love you using Han Solo as an example, because it's not necessarily means he's like connect to the Force, but I think he's definitely at the Force's will, or his actions are in some capacity influenced by the Force. Han being a kind person helping Kira, Han being a kind person helping Chewie, Han being a kind person and helping Beckett. Obviously it's for money reasons, but we know that's not Han's MO at the end. Han, of course, helping God, who are the pirates in that movie? I'm struggling. I bet your listeners like, say their name. You know who I'm referring to.
Yes.
The redheaded lady.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Infus Nest.
Yes.
Like he helped Infus Nest for for a reason that he does not know or comprehend, because that is Han, right? And then, of course, you see an example like Greedo. I love Greedo. Greedo's at the wrong place at the wrong time. And Greedo is also being, kind of a selfish type. He was going to go hunt down Han for money that he owed Jabba. It's all about, narrative decisions, but I do think that the Cosmic Force does have an influence on people like Han or people like Sabine. And this is not just me coping with it. This is kind of how I see a lot of storytelling in Star Wars, right? Like another great example, and this kind of goes with it actually, dude. Omega. Bad Batch is my favorite animated show. Amazing show. And we know when we look at Omega's genetics, she is more prone, and her blood is more prone to accepting the M count, though she is not inherently connected to the Force. We see her and Gunji go and feel in the tree and Kashyyyk, and there is a connection there, though she is not inherently able to lift rocks and move stuff. Asajj Ventress even takes a liking to her. There's something there, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that they are truly Force sensitive. You can be open to the Force. Lor San Tekka is a great example. I couldn't get that out. He obviously does worship the Force. Chirrut Imwe worships the Force in some sort of way, and he is connected to it. I am the Force. The Force is with me. I'm one with the Force. The Force is with me. And like all those things are there for the moment, right? I don't know. I love that you brought up Han Solo, because there is a direct George Lucas quote that I found, and I guess I shouldn't say it because it kind of negates it, where George's like, and he says it jokingly, he's like, Han Solo is a connected to the Force, he's a zombie. And that's like a joke he made years ago. I don't know why it's written down, but it's written down. But that was a brilliant question, because Sabine, Han, very different people. Sabine found a way to tap into it. Han, not so much. Yeah. Han, not so much. But he still has it. He still has a connection to what is right and what is right and what is wrong, and that may be a judgment of, how does the Force influence one's decisions.
Got it. Okay. I'm glad you brought up Omega, because my next question was is about Omega. Yes. So in the Bad Batch, the M count is an important storyline. Well, in both the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian, but in the Bad Batch, now, from what I understand, unless I'm misunderstanding, Omega has a low M count, but yet she's very valuable to the Empire. So explain why Omega is important to the Empire if her M count is so low.
Are you ready for this? You ready for this?
Yes.
I'm reading directly for the book. Not that I want to be that guy, but it honestly fleshes out my ideas better. And it might take a second for me to get through it, but I'm sure you and the audience will get a kick out of it. It's on page 49 of this book. Yeah. So here it is. Omega, a unique clone of Jango Fett, was pivotal due to her genetic stabilities. Think about stability there. While her M count wasn't particularly high compared to the Force users, her blood retained M count levels during cloning, serving as a stable vessel for M count transfer. So her blood would be the way at which they transfer the M count into Palpatine's clones, into whoever. The second component involved Force-sensitive children whose M counts serve as the source for the transfer. Imperial scientists led by Dr. Roy Simclock captured these children with the help of bounty hunters Cad Bane and Asajj Ventress, bringing them to facilities such as the Tantus base for experimentation. The Bad Batch further provides further clarity on midichlorians. Asajj Ventress remarks M counts reflect Force aptitude, but do not guarantee Force sensitivity. This is consistent with Star Wars lore. It even goes on to bring in General Grievous, but the idea of like Omega being able to have it and hold it in her blood, and then we could transfer it into a clone, is obviously what made her so valuable. I don't necessarily know how that works. Why do some people have higher M counts? Maybe she is so pure. Maybe she is so giving and sweet and thoughtful and always willing to put herself out there before anyone else. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe the idea of like personality traits and maybe your openness to be willing to help other people might play into how your M count is received through someone else's blood. So, and we saw that Grogu went through the same exact thing. Grogu, his blood was being tested the whole entire time for Moff Gideon purposes and probably for Palpatine purposes in the end. So, I wish we would have more concrete answers. A lot of this book is rationalizing what we have, and I think it's done pretty well, honestly. Because the whole idea is, if we all have it, how can we tap into it, right? Acknowledging it's the first thing. And then, of course, learning what it means and how we are able to use it is the second thing. And the third thing is, how does it manifest everywhere else and with everyone else? So
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that the reason why we had this resurgence of midichlorians and the M count in more recent series like The Bad Batch and The Mandalorian is that the storytellers are somehow trying to connect the M count to why Palpatine returned in the sequel trilogy. Do you think they did a good job of doing so, connecting the the sequel trilogy to the M count storylines that we've had?
personally, yes, I think they did an excellent job. Because I don't think it was necessarily a complete I don't think there's like a guy at Lucasfilm like Pablo or someone that's like, we've got to make sure there's a through line. I think it naturally tells its own story. I mean, like from Plagueis to Palpatine, like we always have known Palpatine is obsessed with living forever. And when he does die, like you don't really see his body at the ground. You see the explosion of blue light and it goes away. With a character like Snoke, you see him at the ground. He is dead, tongue out dead. Like for real. But do I like the through line? I do. It honestly is a good narrative backbone for this thing that I wrote, because the whole idea is like, this negates this, this negates George's vision. None of that is negated. I think if anything, and I know you'll agree with me on this, and your audience probably will too, out of everything they've made, from Andor to even the Lego Star Wars, shorts and specials, they have always considered the Force first. Like, we are not going to negate what the Force means and how the Force works in everyone, right? The Force is, to me, and I'm sure to George and Kathleen Kennedy, number one priority. We are going to make sure we do this right. And then everything else, lore might fall second. But no, I think there's a really beautiful through line. I think it's pretty awesome to see how we go from the Acolyte all the way to the Rise of Skywalker, with the High Republic included, and whatever future stories. It's something that they don't want to mess up. If canon can be kind of interpreted in a couple of different ways, I don't think the canon of the Force is something that is up for interpretation. I think it's all there. I think people's abilities to tap into it are going to be different, but I don't think it's going to ever be, this is not what you've thought ever, and now it's this. And I think a lot of people thought midichlorians were going to be that, and they were that for a minute, but they never really were that. I mean, they always kind of had, you to see how it fleshed out, but I don't think anything that's ever came out has negated what midichlorians mean and what the Force means.
Well, we know that Lucasfilm was reluctant to even say the word midichlorian. So do you think that they are done with telling stories involving midichlorians?
Oh,
Are there more stories to tell about midichlorians?
this is something I haven't considered, because every time they even say it or like hint at it, like I lose my absolute mind. No, I don't know if they'll ever be overt necessarily. We know James Mangold has that, like, he described as like a biblical epic, the origin of the Jedi or the origin of the Force, maybe. I don't know. I don't think they're ever going to deeply expand on it unless they let me write a novel. Looking at you. But in all seriousness, like I don't know if they'll ever have the opportunity to continue to expand on it like we have. I think the only thing that would ever really expand on it, which I hope we get in some capacity, is like the following story of the Acolyte. If Plagueis is truly involved, then we will get a much deeper expansion on midichlorians and how they function. And of course, other things in the Force. But James Mangold's project is my big hope. Like, is there a montage of like someone connecting with a living organism or connecting with a plant and realizing that there is connection there? Are they going to show, how someone discovered the Force for the first time, or what is this experience? How do I feel these things? But he's also said, in interviews, he's like, I don't want to be restrained by lore. So I don't know. I would like to get more stuff. I think in some capacity we will. I hope we get explorations of it in different ways, because it is an important element to me and to other people, and to flesh out, what it means to be, someone that cares about this kind of stuff, you know, as obviously I care, obviously you care, people that came to my panel in Japan cared. It's not something that's dead. I think for a long time people are like, oh, let's push this away, but I think they're gonna slowly bring it back.
Well, we know that you love midichlorians and it's a fascination subject for you, but you took it a step further and wrote a book. Why did you feel the need to write a book about it?
I'm going to tell you a full story. Okay. It's
Sure.
going to be a second. You ready for it? I made a video essay about 2 years ago, really about a year and a half ago. And the video essay was about midichlorians and their importance and understanding the Force. It was a 2-hour long video essay, and I sat on it. I wrote a 76-page script. I used 26 different resources, mostly all direct quotes from different novels and different things. I listened to all the commentaries in the movie. I went as deep as I could, Kerwin, as deep as I could. And I was in the deepest part of the ocean. And I thought, okay, I'm going to climb back out of it. I'm going to make this presentation. And I made it. I filmed the video. Video did pretty well. I felt good about it. I knew I was going to Japan for celebration. And I thought to myself, ooh, let's submit a panel. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I had to condense a 2-hour long video essay down to 1 hour and then make an addendum to include the Bad Batch, which had wrapped up by this point, and the Acolyte season 1, which had also, of course, you know, unfortunately not being renewed. So I had to think, how do I tie all this in narratively and include things like, because I mean, I can read like each chapter of the book is specifically mentioned different aspects of the Force. Midichlorians is a reflection of life's mysteries. Midichlorians is a vessel for themes and philosophies. Midichlorians is a mythological and symbolic motif. Midichlorians is a biological theory in our real-world parallels. Midichlorians is a mechanism for lore, and midichlorians is a meditation on life and the Force. So I took all these ideas that I had made general outlines for, and then I decided to put it into the presentation. I wrote a big script, and ended up being 43 pages. And so then I paid an editor to edit it down to about 36 because it still needed to be 1 hour. Like I needed to make this an hour. And that was about 5,000 words. So I went from having a ton of words to having just about half of the words. And so I edited it down, refined it. And as I'm putting it into the presentation for Japan, I'm putting it in. And I'm like, oh man, I could read this as a book. Like I could read this and see it in book form. So what I decided to do is I had a friend of mine who made a self-published book through Amazon, and I asked her how she did it, and she walked me through the step-by-step process, and I was watching her do it. I'm like, oh, this is easy. This is brilliant. At the convention, I can announce my book at the end of my panel, right? And it's not an officially licensed Lucasfilm book. It's not by Del Rey. This is all through me, all by me, all completely of my own, you know, I guess creation. You know, a lot of other things are referenced in the book, but connecting the ideas were all independently on my own. So I formatted it. I put it through Amazon. So kdp.com, Kindle Direct Publishing. You were able to put your manuscript in. They'll check it. I had to make a cover, so I made a front and back cover. I sent copies of this to Alex Damon from Star Wars Explained and Ken Knapsack from Force Center and Alden Diaz. And I asked them to review it, read it, and I asked Alden Diaz to write the foreword. That being said, in this book, I made a specific notion to had APA citations. So I did not play. I mean, I am not playing around. Like you can't argue me because all the facts are there and completely there. So it went from being a video essay to being a celebration panel to being a book. And then now I have the privilege to be able to come on shows like yours and Tarkin's Top Shelf. And I'm not going to give anything away yet, but I'm speaking at about 3 conventions in the next 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So now I'm doing that circuit. And I'm not going to try to convince everyone in the world to fall in love with this stuff, but I want to convince them that it is not this big, scary thing that everyone was so freaked out about 26 years ago. So the book strictly came from a drive to have it be announced in celebration. And it was, you know, it was its own weird thing. It wasn't like a Lucasfilm, blah. It was very much I can tell people now my book was announced at Star Wars Celebration because it was for clout.
Yes.
But no, really, it is meant as a study on something. If I had to turn in a thesis, if I was getting my doctorate degree, this is the book I would hand them. That'd be it. I mean, you know, if it was about anthropology, if it was about, you know, storytelling, this would be it. Boop, there you go. It's done.
Yeah, it's a very creative book and it's well written.
Thank you.
You did mention you had a panel
Yes.
at Star Wars Celebration back in April in Japan. What was the feedback you received from the people who attended the panel?
I'm so glad you asked this, and I get a little emotional talking about it. Here I am the day of, and you're going to love this because you know me. I wore a full suit to my panel. And at these conventions, they show up in the jean jackets. They show up in the polo shirt. They want to look fine. I wanted to treat this as if you were at a college lecture. And so it was kind of a weird setup this year. Usually it's like a kind of a big wide room. But this one was kind of a narrow, small room, kind of like the size of a rectangle. And so I walk in and, I'm setting everything up, and I look down the hallway before I walk in, and it's like all the way to the end of the hallway. And I'm like, there's no way. They're waiting for something else. There's a bathroom there. It can't be me. Dude, they start to walk in about 7 minutes before the panel, and it ends up filling up every spot in the room. What was crazy is that 5 of those 170 people that were in there were my friends. 165 people I have never met before or seen in my life. My 5 friends that were there were Noah, Maddie Gunner, Alden Diaz, Trey Mitchell, and Brian Fry. And they were all scattered throughout. And about 30% of the audience were Japanese. So what I did was at the beginning of my panel, I had a QR code that had the full script written out in Japanese. So they were able to scan it, get the information, so they would be able to follow along. I got a lot of good feedback on that. But to look out at a room in a foreign country, mind you, this isn't like a Star Wars Celebration New Orleans, This isn't Star Wars Celebration Anaheim. This is a truly foreign country that people traveled 15, 16 hours to get to, and to see that room filled up. And they had to put a sticker on the fan panel area that said at capacity. They had to put a sticker as the only one that whole weekend that I saw personally that had at capacity on the side. And still gets me a little free. It still is unbelievable. They had to turn people away. I hired a photographer, dude, and they turned her away. I still had to pay for it, but they turned her away because she couldn't get allowed in. It met the fire marshal code. So there is an obvious need for people, or there is an obvious desire for people to understand this concept. It's there, right? And I mean, I've sold over 70 books in less than 2 months. So it's evident that people really do care about this stuff. And, that was an honor. Literally, I couldn't even really relish the moment because I went full on teacher mode. I was full on, or I was just talking and then going and moving because I had a single hour to get all this done. And it was 126 slides. So it was wow. Videos included. So It ended up working out really, really well. And, it's funny. The next one's going to be, in Los Angeles, and I'm sure I might see you there. I don't know, but I don't know if I can pitch the same thing again, but I really want to,
Yeah, absolutely.
People care.
It seems very popular topic. Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. Who knew? But also it's coming from a person, like I said, you're so well known in this space, you're part of this community. You have always been, someone who was very nice, very kind to not just me, but everyone in the Star Wars community. So I think, any topic that you come up with, Scotty, people are interested in hearing your take on it. So
I have another one I'm working on right now.
Nice.
I'm not even kidding, but I'll tell you once we stop recording. Sure. It's something that I'm really trying to reflect on a lot as this summer, as I'm on the summer break. But I very much appreciate that because I feel the same about you. Genuinely, I've always appreciated what you and Keith do, and Tanya, shout out to Tanya. But it's cool to be in a space where obviously we have like-minded sensibilities, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to like midichlorians. But the fact that you want to embrace it and even talk about it on your show shows that it's something that people are willing to look at. It's a cool topic. It's just a little misunderstood. And things like this book and things like this appearance and things like, even a silly YouTube video will help you understand that.
Yes, exactly.
That's the point.
Yeah. So I was checking out your social media, and you mentioned something that just dropped, I think, yesterday. You're talking about you're part of a New York Times documentary. Can you talk about that? Yeah. So it's not something that I was interviewed for. It's not something that I necessarily worked on, but this news is absolutely breaking news. In 2021, I got an email from 2 Swedish directors that were making a really interesting documentary on how media is influenced by, what you see as a viewer
through the camera lens is an experience within itself. And honestly, I wasn't that creatively involved in it. They reached out to me. They saw my reaction video. And for those that don't know, I have a reaction video. It is the most viewed Star Wars reaction video in the world, coming at like 6.8 million views. And it was during the Rise of Skywalker. And it's something I'm very proud of. But it's also something my students make fun of me for because I cry. Wow. So that doesn't help. Yeah. But apparently, I knew this is going to be shown on Swedish TV. I have known this since 2021. But yesterday, I get like the punch in the gut of reading an email from these people. And they're like, oh, it's a New York Times video. And it's not only that, but they played it for Swedish Parliament. And it's like a few seconds. It's not like I'm the center of it. But I mean, for about 10 seconds, you're watching this grown man cry. So it was a compelling thing. They talk about, reaction culture. Yeah. They talk about how AI has changed people perceive things too. They talk about what the camera was originally built for and, how much all that's changed. And now right now in this world, right, this is a crazy stat that I heard. There are 45 billion cameras on this world as we speak. So like not just digital, I'm talking your phone camera. I'm talking the camera. I'm talking to you on this web camera right here. My iPad camera, the camera that you had growing up, your VHS camera. I mean, like, I never thought about that statistic about how much of our lives, just like this podcast and this broadcast, is an interview or is on camera. You just don't think about it anymore. We had a time where cameras were a rare thing and every photo was like this, because they would take a photo and it'd take 15 minutes and every person looked angry and scared. But now we live in a time where there's cameras everywhere and it's unstoppable. When I go driving, like, my car has a camera in it. The stoplight has a camera in it. It was a cool documentary. But yeah, to see my face, and then it said like Star Wars reaction, and then it said like the bottom New York Times. I'm like, this is surreal. But I guess that's the hard part about putting yourself out there. And they asked if they can use the video, and I said, of course. Now if it teaches someone something.
Was this your reaction to the trailer for The Rise of Skywalker? Yes. Were you at Celebration when the trailer was released, or were you watching it from home or some other place? So
you're going to love this. This is 2019. And you probably remember, we hadn't gotten the name of the movie.
Exactly.
We knew JJ was working on it. We didn't know who was going to show up in it. We didn't know none of it.
Right.
And they had already shot all of it, which was crazy, or a majority of it. The date is, I can't remember the date exactly. I wish I could, but it was 2019. It was the first big panel of the whole convention, and we're on the showroom floor. Weirdly enough, you're going to love this. I had just met Jerry like the day before that. So like, it's really weird. Like why all these things are happening together. And of course we start the podcast in June, and I sat on this reaction video for literally 5 or 6 months. So I had it. So yes, we're on the showroom floor. They have the whole reveal. The trailer starts. It's Rey standing there with the lightsaber at her side, and Kylo speeding up. You see the jump, and then all the beautiful eye candy of Ochia Bestoon's ship, and you see Chewie. You see all of it, and Leia hugging Rey, and it was all such an intense moment. And then I explain this to my students because, of course, they dog on me. They make fun of me just brutally for it because I'm a grown man crying, and it just seems silly, but I explained to them, and I had to work at a Catholic school. I'm like, you ever felt like the touch of something that you can't explain, and it was a communal experience? It could be adoration, it could be whatever. I had that moment watching something that I loved coming to an end, and I knew it was coming to an end. And of course, you get the whole cackle, which you're like, what is going on? What? And then you get the title reveal, and that's the part that still gets me choked up. The Rise of Skywalker. Like, it's the greatest name, the coolest name for the movie. It's literal, it's metaphorical. And it was a beautiful moment, and I wish I could experience that moment again. But what I did was, when I edited the video, I put that video, I put the Resistance Broadcast, who's a great channel. They let me use their video. I took in a video from IGN, I put it in there. I took another video that I saw on the internet, put it there. I have a friend of mine sitting next to me, I put their video in there. So it's a grand total of 6 or 7 videos where everyone's watching the same exact thing, and you see the reaction from all different angles. And I still, part of me, didn't realize how much my life would change after that moment, because silly enough, like literally from that moment on, Jerry and I became best friends. And then now I'm here. We're 6 years later of the Bombadcast, and now I'm talking to you, and I got a book out. It's just, it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah,
it really was.
It's life changing, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Is that video still available to see?
I will send it to you.
Please do. Yes, please do.
Very nerdy.
Please do. And then you're also celebrating an anniversary of being a DJ.
I love it you say that. DJing, you're gonna love this because I know you understand this. As an educator, don't make that much. I wanted to go to Japan. That was my end goal. I had bought the flights, I had bought the tickets, and now I had credit card debt. And I'm like, oh my God, what can I do to pay this off? And how can I figure out how do I make this trip feasible? Because I went for 14 days. How do I make this trip feasible? You know, my wife's not going with me. She's studying for the bar at that point. Well, she's studying for law school. She's now studying for the bar. And I had to find a way to make some money. And I've always messed around with I had a little itty bitty, scratching records of my little Newmark party mix. And I had it for 2 years, messed around with it. I got really good at it. And then I decided, let's take it one step further and start offering like free DJ services for high school dances. And so the more I saw that I could do it, I saw people do it, I started charging people, started doing private parties, started doing all that. And it's gotten to the point where, I got a gig tomorrow. I have a gig tomorrow. Wow. It's in Mississippi. I have to drive 2 hours to get there. And it's a friend of mine. I'm making a good chunk of cash to be able to do it. And it's a wonderful thing. It is, weirdly enough, that I'm going to tie it back into Midichlorians. Yes. You're going to love this. It is the idea of knowing how to read people. As a teacher, you got to have that naturally. As a podcaster, this too. When you can read someone's body language, you can read the energy. Did that song work for them? Maybe this will work better. Oh, I saw that person clapping. All those things you've got to be able to read and sense and feel and determine what is best for the next moment. But yes, it's my first official year. We just crossed that threshold. My first paid gig, I DJ'd she's a medical student. She graduated from with her doctorate. I forget how they graduate there, but I did her party, and it was a beautiful moment because I had to DJ for someone like 6 years younger than me, and this was my first time doing it, right? And so I'm like, ooh, how do I this is gonna be hard. So honestly, it's a really beautiful blessing to have it now because it did help me pay for this trip. It's helping me pay for a lot of things like these convention appearances. They don't pay you to fly out, and they don't pay you to get the hotel. Right. So you have to make that work. And is it worth it? And frankly, I have a couple of weekends every now and then where I just constantly work, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. And then DJing, are you talking about 2 turntables and albums? Really?
Not albums. I want to get there. But I'm using a digital turntable. Okay, got it. Okay. And I have everything in MP3 files. And it's not like someone clicks play on the iPad and walks away. No, I'm scratching. Yeah. I'm mixing. I'm blending. I'm a firm believer in making sure you don't stop moving. Yeah. The beat's gonna keep going. And yeah, that's something that I'm very proud of because it is. I didn't realize how hard it was. Wow. It was not something you can just do. Yeah. I always looked at DJs like, it can't be that hard. And you're like, ooh, Jesus. Yeah. And I play guitar. So I know music. I know how things structure, but it still doesn't mean it's going to translate when you're sitting behind a board and you're mixing and scratching. So what is the most popular dance song out there that gets people on the dance floor? I love that you asked this. There's about 4 or 5 that are go-tos, never miss. Number 1, September by Earth, Wind, Fire. Ooh, okay. That's a classic. All ages. That's a classic. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It's more classics than new stuff. There's always a new one that you can throw in there that kids will like. Dancing Queen by ABBA. Another one of those 70s disco classics. Everyone hates disco. Everyone hated disco in the 70s and the 80s, but they sure like dancing to it now. Weirdly enough, any line dance, the Cupid Shuffle, the Flex, any of those really popular line dance songs. Culturally, I don't know how it is where you're from, but culturally, line dancing is the initiator. My favorite is the obviously the Cupid Shuffle is a great
Yeah.
one, but like there are some that Casper Slide. That's my favorite one. That's the one. Everybody clap your hands. Clap, clap, clap,
Yes.
clap, you know that one.
Yes.
So everyone loves that one. Then you got throwing a new song like "Hot to Go" by Chappell Roan. HOTTOGO. They like that one. But you know, and honestly, it just depends on the crowd you're playing for. I'm doing an RV park tomorrow. And they have like a fancy like lazy river. It's in Mississippi. It's on the coast. It's nice. So tomorrow's gonna be a lot more like I'm playing "Summertime" by DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince. So I'm gonna have a little bit of that in there, you know, with some Kenny Chesney, with some even a little bit of like I got Blue Oyster Cult in there. So like
Nice.
you just gotta read who's your crowd, who's your people, and pick them out and see what works for them. If someone's dancing a lot, give them what they want. If the other person in the corner is kind of shrugging their shoulders, well, you know, maybe give them what they want, or give it to the person that's really enjoying themselves. Yeah. All depends, dude.
Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome, and that's just
I appreciate.
Yeah,
this.
I mean, that's just a credit to you for your talent. You know, like
thank you.
Wow, and the power.
I work hard.
Yeah, and the power of music, right? Because you talked about music is one of those things that binds people together, you know? So yeah, that's wonderful. Wow. Scotty, thank you so much. This was,
honored.
This was fun. Who knew Midichlorians could be fun to talk about?
That's why I'm here, dude. That's why I'm here. We got to make them fun again. Right. But no, I appreciate being on this. You know, I'm very lucky to have this, what you're holding right now. And to be able to go around and show people shows and talk about it. Thank you so much. Yeah. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, and congratulations once again, the author of Midi-chlorians, an alliance of science, mythology, and magic. Scotty, where can people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me at the Bombadcast. We go live every Thursday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's a little late. We're working with Jerry's new job schedule, but we cover everything Star Wars there. It can be fun. It can be goofy stuff. Recently, you know, we've got our 6-year anniversary stream next week, July 19th, or June 19th. So 6 years doing that's nuts. But we're always there for a good time. We're always there to have fun. Last night we looked at the marketing of Revenge of the Sith and the commercials and everything behind that movie and the hype leading up to that movie. We found a couple of interesting little nuggets in there that we're going to share. But you know, I'm anyone that follows me, anyone that gets this book, you can just type in SCOTTY JAYRO on Amazon. It's the first thing that pops up. If you look up even Midichlorians, it's the first thing that pops up. And the book is cheap. The book is $8.50. And if you got Prime, it'll show up at your house either the next day or in 2 days. So
that's exactly how I got my copy. That's
there we go.
Yeah. So of course I'm going to keep this book, and when I see you in person, I'm going to ask you to sign it.
Honored.
Yeah, absolutely.
Honored. Will do. Need my pen.
Yeah. So if you're watching or listening to this episode, please like and subscribe on YouTube or leave a comment on wherever you get your streaming. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Thank you so much once again. This is Father.Son.Galaxy with our guest, Scotty Jayro. Until next time, take care, and we will see you again.